This has become kind of mini course on drafting. Hello my young lawyer friends and law students. I have already posted on this channel 3 videos relating to the fundamentals of drafting. And in these 3 videos, I have explained to you the first 2 fundamental rules of drafting. In this video, I will be covering the 3rd and 4th fundamental rules of drafting. So stay tuned and watch the video completely. Just to recapitulate in short, the first fundamental rule of drafting tells you to plead facts and not law. It excludes pleading of law and wants you to plead only facts. The second fundamental rule of drafting tells you it's a bit narrower version of the first rule, to plead only and only material facts. And now what are material facts? All that I have explained in that particular video. The video series relating to drafting is available on this channel in the form of a separate playlist for the convenience of you people. Okay, now coming to the 3rd fundamental rule of drafting. It tells you to plead facts and not evidence. So this rule excludes pleading of evidence from your drafting. The material facts on which a party relies for his claim or defense are called facta probanda, and the facts by means of which these material facts are to be proved are called facta probantia. So facta probanda are the facts to be proved, and facta probantia are evidentiary facts, or the facts by means of which facta probanda are to be proved. So facta probantia, that means evidentiary facts, are not the facts in issue, but they are only relevant facts which are to be proved at the time of trial to establish the material facts, or facta probanda. So these facts, these evidentiary facts, are not required to be pleaded because they are required to be proved directly in the evidence at the time of trial. Ordinarily, the distinction between the 2 kinds of facts is so clear and discernible that it is possible to separate them from each other and to choose to plead only material facts and to exclude the pleading of evidentiary facts. But sometimes the facts are so indistinguishable, they are so mixed up that it is not possible to separate them. In such a case, it is a safe practice to even plead evidentiary facts rather than excluding them. I will give you a simple illustration of what are facta probanda and what are facta probantia. There was an action brought on the basis of a policy of life insurance. That means a man had died and an action on the basis of the life insurance policy was brought against the insurance company by his wife. Now, one of the terms in the insurance policy was that the policy would be void if the insured died by his own hand. These were the words of the terms of the policy. If the insured died by his own hand, the policy would be void. So in that case, there were many pleadings made in the defense of the insurance company. In defense, the insurance company alleged that the insured was for many weeks before his death in a moody, miserable state, that just a day before his death he had procured a pistol, and after his death there was found on his person a letter written to his wife stating that he intended to kill himself. Now, it was held that pleading of all these allegations was unnecessary because these are all evidentiary facts. What was required to be pleaded was that the insured had died by his own hand. That was all. So this illustration, if you bear in mind, will always guide you to be able to distinguish between the material facts which are to be pleaded and the evidentiary facts which are to be avoided. If you have lost the track of this series, just let me remind you that these basic and fundamental rules of drafting apply to suits, the drafting of suits. I am telling you the fundamental rules of drafting of suits. There are many kinds of proceedings where these rules get somewhat relaxed. Of course, these rules are not to be dispensed with. These basic rules are to be followed, but in addition to that, in some proceedings, like in writ petition, the rules of drafting get somewhat relaxed, and you may plead even the evidence. You may even plead the arguments. You may even plead the law in a petition, because a petition is different from a plaint. Stricto sensu. Plaint in a civil suit is to be drafted strictly on the basis of these fundamental rules of pleadings, whereas a petition is somewhat of different nature. The very words plaint and petition bring out the difference. That brings me to the fourth rule of pleading, which is very simple to understand. The fourth rule of pleading can be summarized in just one line, one sentence, that your pleadings should be concise and with precision. So precision and conciseness should be there in your pleadings. But you must remember that the pleadings are to be divided into paragraphs wherever necessary. So it should not be a blob of text. It should be properly divided according to the key ideas it represents. That is important. Another thing you must bear in mind is to number your paragraphs consecutively. And when it comes to writing dates, figures, you must write them in number as well as in words, because that brings accuracy, exactness. So precision means accuracy, and conciseness means bringing within it the whole thing that you want to say without leaving anything that is important. So precision represents accuracy, exactness, and conciseness represents the wholeness of what you want to say, but without being verbose. Verbosity and diffuseness are foreign to a well-trained legal mind. That is what Justice M.C. Chagla had said in his famous biography, Roses in December. That perfectly fits well here. So you have to be very precise and concise and not too verbose, not only in your pleadings, but also while arguing in the court. Now, how to obtain precision? Now, to tell that, let me just refer to some of my notes so that I'll be in a position to explain it to you better. So, you can attain precision by remembering these rules of guidance. Number 1, names of persons and places should be accurately given and correctly spelled. And in any case, the spelling adopted at one place should be adhered to throughout. Number 2, you have to avoid pronouns like he or she, this or that, unless the antecedent about that person who is being mentioned is very close. And next, as far as possible, do not refer to the plaintiff or defendant by their names only. Call them the plaintiff or the said defendant. Or if there are more than one, then call them the plaintiff number 1, the defendant number 2, or the plaintiff Rajesh Kumar, or the defendant Manoj Saxena, something like that. Refer to them in the same way throughout. The next, things should be called by their correct names, and in any event, same thing should be described by the same name. Next rule, allege your facts without referring to ifs and buts. Be bold and clear. The next rule, avoid the habit of describing facts in passive voice, omitting the nominative. That means, for example, the defendant's money was paid up. Instead of that, say, the plaintiff paid up defendant's money. Next rule, avoid complex sentences. Now, instead of using one complex sentence, it is better to divide the matter into several simple sentences. For example, I'll read out to you the bad form of pleading. The defendant, as son of A, is liable to the plaintiff in damages for breach of a contract to sell his house made by the said A in favor of the plaintiff by an agreement dated December 10, 1982. Instead of this, say, paragraph number 1, by an agreement dated 10 December 1982, A agreed to sell his house to the plaintiff. Then the next paragraph, number 2, A did not perform the said contract during his lifetime. Then paragraph number 3, A died on blank, whatever date you want to put on, and the defendant is his son and representative. Then the next paragraph, the plaintiff called upon the defendant to perform the contract entered into by his father, but he refused to do so. The next paragraph, number 5, the plaintiff claims damages. So next rule, divide your pleadings into separate paragraphs, and as far as possible, state only one fact in one paragraph. The next rule, avoid repetition. And the next rule, all necessary particulars should be embodied in the pleadings. Friends, that is all about the fundamental rules of drafting. This has become a kind of mini course on drafting. If you refer to the playlist that I have prepared specially on the topic of drafting, you will get all the fundamental rules of drafting. Now, before I leave, just one word of caution. Whatever I have taught you in this small series of drafting is just the surface. They are just the fundamentals, so that you get a fair idea of what the fundamental rules of drafting are. I strongly recommend you to read good books on the subject of drafting and get into the depth of it and attain mastery on the topic of drafting. Now, let me also tell you where from these fundamental rules of drafting emanate. So they are just nearby you. They emanate from Civil Procedure Code. If you see Order 6 of the Civil Procedure Code, you will come to know that these fundamental rules of drafting are stated in that order itself. So just open your book of CPC and read that order. I also recommend you to look into the model forms of plain and written statement that are given in the bare act of CPC itself. Another important thing before I end this video is I would suggest you to read a very good book on the drafting of pleadings, and the book that I would recommend to you is the book by Mr. Mogha. This is the book, a fantastic book which I have been referring throughout my life, my professional life. Now, this book of Mogha's Law of Pleadings is available in the market. You just search it or just ask your law bookseller to make it available to you. This book explains to you the entire theory behind the rules of drafting. In fact, there are 2 books written by Mogha on drafting. One is on the drafting of pleadings and the other is drafting of conveyancing. Conveyancing means deeds and documents like sale deed, lease deed, gift deed and all that. So that is also a fantastic book. Now the book of Mogha on drafting of pleadings, you will get the new edition. This is my edition, old edition, and I had purchased it way back somewhere in say 93, 94 when I was a new lawyer. And you can see the the condition of the book for so many years. But you get a new edition of Mogha's Law of Pleadings. And friends, let me also tell you honestly that whatever I have taught you in this video series about drafting is based upon this book only. So if you refer to this book and go into the details of all that, you will have a good grasp, a good grip over all the rules of pleading. There are a lot to cover with respect to pleadings, and that is not possible through videos. But still, I have tried my best to give you at least the fundamentals of the rules of drafting so that you can get a first-hand knowledge of what all these rules of drafting are about. So with that, I end this video and also this video series on drafting. Maybe I'll be putting some videos with regard to drafting of writ petitions in future.